California is on a path to self-destruction. Hollywood is already toast, and now the most productive entrepreneurs will leave, taking their tax revenues and job creation.
And look, you probably saw the headlines about California's new billionaire tax and thought, good, eat the rich. I hope they start with the ones who have private islands and gold-plated toilets. But here's the wait, what moment. This isn't actually a tax on billionaires.
If this bill becomes a law, state analysts out of California say that they could lose hundreds of millions of dollars a year in tax revenue. It could lead to job losses, investment losses.
It's a private property seizure system designed to look like a tax, and it's a trap that's been set for your front door. Because while they're telling you it's about the 200 richest people in California, they're actually eyeing a $176 trillion honeypot that belongs to the middle class. And it gets weirder. This was launched by one of California's most powerful unions, the SEIU healthcare workers. It started as a negotiating tactic to force the state to pay for healthcare, but now it has morphed into a plan to audit your wedding ring. Even Governor Newsom is coming out against it because he knows how dangerous this precedent really is. The Billionaire Tax Act, or BTA, it sounds simple, a 5% tax on people worth over $1 billion. It's meant to fix a shortfall in healthcare. Noble, right? Like a Robin Hood story, but with fewer tights. But here's the escalation. This is the first time in American history we are moving from taxing what you earn to seizing what you own. And if you think I'm being dramatic, like I'm reaching or trying to scare you for clicks, because I've been accused of that before, let me show you something that literally just hit the news out of New York this week. New York City's mayor, Zohran Mamdani, first, he's a self-proclaimed Democrat socialist, one small step away from a communist. And you know how they feel about personal property. Connect the dots how you want, but he just appointed a tenants' rights advocate named Sia Weaver to run the city's tenant protection office.
The mayor spent a good part of his press conference in Jackson Heights, Queens yesterday taking questions about Weaver. She is 37 years old and, like him, a Democratic socialist. Mamdani announced her appointment right after he was inaugurated on New Year's Day. In 2018, she tweeted, "Seize private property." In another tweet a year later, she called home ownership a weapon of white supremacy.
The person in charge of protecting residents in the biggest city in America believes your home is a weapon of hate, not an investment for your family. This isn't a maybe anymore. If someone told you just 12 months ago that an unapologetic socialist would be the mayor of the biggest city in the country, you would have snatched the tinfoil hat right from their head. But this ideology has entered the room officially. They're here. They've got the nation flanked too, and they're in power. You gotta pay attention, because once the people writing policy start treating ownership like a moral crime, the next step is treating ownership like a billable offense. Normally, the government only takes a cut when you sell something and make a profit. Under this new plan, they don't care if you didn't sell anything. They just want 5% of your stuff because it exists. Here's the step-by-step flow of how this whole thing works. Step 1, you go to work, you solve a problem, and you make some money. Step 2, the government takes a cut of that money right away. We call that an income tax. Step 3, you take the small amount of money that is left over and you save it. You buy a house, you buy a car, you save it for your kids, you buy food. Step 4, this is the new part. The government comes back every single year and asks, hey, how much do you still have left? And honestly, that veil is thinner than you think. You see, right now, anyone with an internet connection can look up exactly what you own, where you live, and how much equity you have. It's all public record. That's why I stopped putting my name on anything. I set up anonymous land trusts and LLCs, and it effectively takes my name off the public hit list so auditors and lawsuit-happy lawyers can't see what I own. I dropped a link down below, and a QR code should be right here. If you have assets you want to keep private, go look at hidemyequity.com, because trust me, once the government decides to audit your existence, you don't want to be the easiest target on the list. And here's the truth about the math. California thinks this tax will raise $100 billion, but that entire amount would only pay for 5 weeks of interest on our national debt. It's not that much money. It wouldn't even begin to fill the $1 trillion hole of long-term debt that California has dug for itself in pensions and bonds. Billionaires like Peter Thiel or Larry Page are facing bills of over $1 billion in cash, money they don't just have sitting in a vault. As Palmer Luckey put it, they have to somehow come up with billions in cash just to pay a tax on stuff they've never sold.
Official word, I know this for a fact after this past weekend in California, there's only 199 billionaires. The one I was talking to is leaving
for our country, creating jobs instead of what we're doing now, which is driving the wealth creators away.
And look, for the skeptics out there like thinking this will never happen, look no further than the income tax that we pay today. Day zero was in 1913, and when it started, it was a tiny tax that exempted the first $3,000, which is about $95,000 in today's money. It was sold as a victory over the rich. Yeah, even back then they were trying to tax the rich. They promised, though, it would never touch the common man. Now fast forward to today, and the IRS knows every Venmo transaction and every stock sale you made last year. The billionaires are just the tip of the pinky to get the door open. They use the ultra-wealthy as a human shield because they know you won't fight back if you think it only hurts the guy with the yacht. The real target isn't the $8 trillion held by billionaires. It's the $176 trillion in assets held by everyone else. So how does the government know what your assets are worth? Well, they've got to audit everything. They're going to tell you what they're worth. They want to pull back the veil on you and your possessions. In this private property seizure system, they'll have to look at your life, your whole life. Your 2025 Lexus, they'll use an actuarial table to tell you what it's worth. Your grandma's diamond, they're going to assign a value to that too. Think about that level of intrusion. I mean, to tax your wealth, the state must first catalog every single thing you own. They aren't just auditing your income, they're auditing your existence. And here's the holy crap moment. California is proposing this because they are facing an $18 billion deficit next year. And they are desperate because they lost $70 billion in earlier accounting mistakes. They spent $15 billion on a high-speed rail that has not even 1 mile of operational track yet. And it gets worse. While they're asking you for your property, they just admitted they spent $24 billion on homelessness without tracking if any of it worked. They admitted it. There's no shame there. The state auditor confirmed they have no idea where any of that money went. Instead of fixing the leak, they are installing a permanent vacuum in your wallet. That is what is called a patronage system, and here's how this money wheel actually works. Step one, the government creates a massive program for something like homelessness or a bullet train to nowhere. Step two, they funnel billions of your tax dollars into these programs. And then step three, the people running those programs, they take a cut of that money and donate it right back into the politicians' campaigns. It's a round trip for your hard-earned dollars that ends up in a campaign coffer. But here's the problem. Eventually the leak gets too big. They spend so much that the well runs dry. They can't raise income taxes any higher without people leaving, so they have to reach for the only thing you have left, your home equity. In 2012, they sold a temporary tax hike to save schools. 4 years later, they made it permanent. That's how it always works. What started as an emergency became the new normal. And that is why they need this precedent set. Once they establish that the government can take a percentage of what you own, not just what you earn, the game is over. They will lower that billionaire threshold just like they did in 1913. First, it's $1 billion, then it's anyone with a paid-off mortgage. In 1978, California voters said enough, and they passed Prop 13 to cap property taxes. Now, 48 years later, they're trying to break that limit by calling it a wealth tax. Billionaires, they can hire 100 lawyers to fight the government for years. We can't. When this rolls down to the middle class, you won't have a choice. You'll get a bill for 5% of your home's value. If you can't pay it, they take your home. And here's the retroactive trap. If you are a resident on January 1st, 2026, you're already locked in. You can't escape by leaving now. You're already on the hook. The only way to win is to stop the precedent. Because once they start taking what you own, the idea of private property is dead. The government will come for you to backstop their failure. So what's your move? Well, you need to get your equity out of seizure-prone jurisdictions and into legal structures that don't let these people look through the windows. You see, most folks don't realize their home address is currently sitting on a public hit list. And that's why I pulled this video out here for you to watch next, so you can see how to fix that legal setup today. It's the only way to tighten up your defenses. It's about making sure your name is finally off that list before the rules change again.